Everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing another life purpose reading, but it's not going to be about Justin Trudeau. It's going to be about Chrystia Freeland. So if you're curious to know about her life purpose and her design, keep on watching. Hey guys, welcome back, or welcome if you are new. My name's Raminder. I am a Vancouver-based lawyer turned spiritual healer and psychic healer. So what I do for my business is I read people's human design. I teach my clients about their life purpose and how to really tune into their activations in order to succeed. As we know, there's been a lot going on in 3D Earth, let's say, for the last couple of years with Schmovid and the pandemic. And I did a video on Justin Trudeau, which was well received, and it allowed people to understand him from a different perspective. And these videos are not here to garner compassion, but just to show you and tell you what these individuals' energies are like. And I don't usually do this type of stuff, but it really has been fascinating. I'm not going to lie. For those of you that don't know who Chrystia Freeland is, she is a Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. I'm not going to really go into her roles and stuff, but if you know who Chrystia is, you know who she is. She's the one that sometimes has the shifty eyes in the House of Commons or on the news when making these announcements, or has had them before, okay? Her energy is very, very interesting. I'm gonna soon put up the human design chart here, but overall there are a couple of things that I've noticed in her behavior, right? The shutting down, the lack of accountability, the rudeness, and that's all coming through in her chart and her human design. And I don't want to label her anything, but when I explain energy to individuals, I explained this on episode 3 of my podcast, which will be linked in my bio through my link tree. It's on Spotify, it's under the RKH as well, but healing is an intergenerational thing. So if your family has been involved in certain things in the past or in past generations, you are usually going to be carrying that specific energy to heal in a specific capacity. And for Chrystia, that ends up being the Nazi regime. Her grandfather was actually a reporter or a journalist for a Nazi propaganda magazine, where they wrote anti-Semitic, hateful things against Jews. And I'm not calling her a Nazi. It's the energy that carries over intergenerationally that we have the ability to heal. As we can see, she hasn't used the opportunities to really heal her lineage by the way in which she speaks about Canadians that made a different choice than her. We don't really even know whether she has the V, but individuals that are V-free, going along, of course, with Justin Trudeau's comments about misogyny, terrorists and extremism and things like that. And so we can see how that parallel mindset is there, of course, with Trudeau, but as well as with Freeland. And so she has yet to heal that. And if she doesn't heal that, it'll likely pass on to one of her children to have to heal that in some sort of way. I do know that she was involved in some borderline, if not completely racist stuff in her university days. I don't really know too much about it. I didn't want to read too much about it. I just wanted to share that it is energetically linked and that she has the opportunity to come here and do things differently. After looking at her design, I can see why she has not done things differently, whether that's based on her authority, her activations, or lack of activations, really, from what I see. And I want to go into that to explain to you a little bit about her, okay? Chrystia is a projector. In human design, projectors are people that are meant to be invited to things, okay? So often she is invited to speak and takes that opportunity. She's given the opportunity to, speak her mind, to give her opinion on a very public platform. Projectors are also people that can burn out easily because the projectors on the planet are not meant to be the typical hustler go-getter type. It's not that things are not achieved, it's the way in which we're programmed to believe that we need to achieve, which is that alpha hustler 9-to-5 mindset. A lot of projectors are not successful that way. Chrystia is under an immense amount of burnout, but because of her conditioning, because of how she has collaborated and does collaborate with the energy around her, which I'm going to get into, she is able to sustain a level of energy even though she is very much unaligned with her true authentic self. And whether she's going to learn that in this lifetime, we won't really know until, you know, the days or the years or months go on, as politics continue to progress. Okay. And so we all know a projector, okay? And it doesn't mean that you are projecting your feelings or your emotions. It's about how you are meant to respond. And so for her, she's given a lot of opportunity to respond through the invitations she's given. So response is really a manifesting generator and generator thing in human design, but you still respond to invitation, right? And so it's kind of similar and overlaps in this specific energy. She's a 4-6 in human design, which is an opportunist role model. The line 4 in human design is quite a stubborn energy. It's one of the fixed energies in our profile. And so for her, she really gets off on what she thinks is activism or advocacy. She really gets off on what she says because of, again, the environment that she's in, and that's her authority as she has a sounding board authority, right? And so I'm going to have the chart here where you can see that. It may not make sense as to what I'm talking about, but you know, it's what I'm reading and what shows up in the specific algorithm. And so for her, she wants to be liked. She takes every opportunity to be in the spotlight. And so when she gets that promotion or the enthusiasm from her colleagues, that gives her that burst of energy. And for a projector, you know you're going to be out of balance when you're bitter. And we already know that she's out of balance a lot because she portrays herself with a huge amount of ignorance and bitterness. And so just by seeing her in that state without seeing her in a sense of peace, which would show that she is in alignment with herself, you know that she on a high level doesn't really believe what she's saying. But I'm going to get a little into that as we go on in the video. And so the bitterness is her off balance. It's her being very matrix and 3D. But like I said before, she's able to continue with that energy because of her colleagues and because of also their lack of empathy, compassion, and really understanding what we're going through on this planet, okay? So I'm going to put my glasses on and look down and talk a little bit about, like I said, her lack of activations as well as her conditioning, all right? She also, in terms of purpose, she has a right angle cross of the 4 ways, 3319. And so what this means is she kind of needs to have alone time in order to recalibrate. She has not got a lot of alone time these last couple of years because of what's been going on in a spiritual awakening. So the spiritual purpose of everything we're going through is to awaken people and to kind of dismantle the patriarchy, systemic bias, and to really shed light on where the problems are as a society and where the shadows really lie. And so because she's a part of, you know, the top executive in the federal government, and because she is deputy prime minister, she doesn't have the opportunity to really step back and be in her own corridors. And that's really important for her to show up properly. So because she hasn't had the time to really process information and be on her own, she hasn't been able to live in her true highest purpose, which is to shine her light after a time of having that time and space, honestly, to just be herself. And so she can't actually be productive in her communication styles. What also helps her be, let's say, unproductive or stay in this negative energy is her husband, is how it kind of reads to me is his enabling behavior. I don't know much about him. I know he is a New York Times reporter. I don't know his stance on anything. I've just heard through hearsay that he has similar views. But overall, if that is the case and that is the truth, she'll be picking up on that energy. And how I like to explain this is, in our home, we are swimming in a collective pool of energy. It could be in our workplace, it could be wherever, it could be with our roommates, right? So we swim in a collective pool of energy. If one person is acting a certain way, that impacts the other person, or it impacts the amount that they're able to grow, which is why I tell a lot of my clients that they need to move out of their homes, out of their parents' homes, let's say, for example, if they're trying to create boundaries, because the boundaries can also only be implemented to a certain point because they're actually still swimming in that energy where they're impacted by their parents' decisions, for example, or their siblings' decisions, for example. The opposite is when you all think alike, you're able to bounce off one another and and collaborate with that. And so how that's going to impact the next generation will be interesting. Whether or not we see that publicly, time will tell, meaning their children that they have together. And so for her purpose is to have a freedom of space and privacy. And she hasn't been able to actually really live in that to process. And so she is really quiet right now, where she's likely burnt out behind her bedroom walls, trying to process what's been happening and unpacking all of this, as we see with many other of these leaders that we have come across. Bonnie Henry, for example. I was not able to find her birthday. If you know her birthday, please provide it, because I actually planned to do her before I did Chrystia Freeland, but I wasn't able to find her birthday to actually pull up her chart. So I'd be interested to see if she also is a projector in the literal and metaphorical sense, and the human design, in the human design way. But overall, it's the requirement to process, which is really needed for these individuals right now. And then comes the guilt, their own awakening, their own processing, the backpedaling, and things like that. And so right now she's recalibrating her energy, and what that's going to bring, we don't really know. So in terms of her activations, I'm going to get back to it. Her main activation is in the channel of structuring, which is 43 to 23 in the gates. The gates in human design are our portals of activation. They are what we should focus on to succeed. Like I said, I don't sense a lot of activation in her chart. It's a lot of conditioning, which I'm going to come to. And so for her, if she was able to easily communicate what she truly authentically believed in, it would be easier for her to live in her truth, right? She has a very defined throat chakra. Sorry if that made some noise. She has a very defined throat chakra, which speaks volumes to the type of person she is, as well as how much she speaks up and what she says. So she has conviction in what she says, right? And that is because of that defined throat chakra that she has, or the defined throat center. And so for her, it's about she's easily understood because she's in an echo chamber. So that's when she's able to thrive. But the thing is she has not yet actually unpacked her own conditioning or her own biases, or at least publicly, to the point where she can use this activation for good. She's still in that swamp of unpacking this and figuring it out. And she's born in 1968. So, she is still hitting that time frame where she's going to be going through her own Chiron return and learning about her own karma, right? Similar to Justin Trudeau. It's quite interesting that they are like two peas in a pod. The Chiron return is the energy of the wounded leader. And for her, I'm going to come to her astrology, but for her, that's something that's a little problematic. And so with her conditioning, she has, what gets in the way is a channel of judgment. She has a strong desire to express herself, right? It makes her happy to express herself, but it's how she does that. In her mind, she thinks that she's improving society by the way she speaks, but really she's causing problems, right? And programming people in a negative way. In her channel of romance, right, with her husband, like I was saying, I kind of sense that there's some enabling behavior there, either one way or back and forth. It's like, okay, sweetie, it's okay that you said that. It's okay that you called people this. Like, it's the lack of accountability factor that's really prevalent in her energy, especially because she comes forward again and again and says the same thing. And I'm going to come to that when it comes to her authority. But in the channel of romance in gates 39 to 55, in her mind, she believes that she's an activist, like I said, but she's not an activist in the right way. She's an activist for a very critical viewpoint, and critical not in a good way, but a very damaging viewpoint. And so for her, she has to have faith in her ability, right? But the thing is, because she's being met with that energy pool, all the people in the federal government, or at least outwardly thinking the same way, she doesn't even have the time and space to allow any other viewpoint to come into her mind. She has to break routine that comes in her channel of rhythm in gates 15 to 5. She does not have a love for humanity. She doesn't have a love for humanity. This doesn't mean that she doesn't love people, but her overarching energy is still rooted in the conditioning, so she can't empathize. So that's why we see her being rude. It's like she has her close people, and if she offends anybody outside of that, she doesn't really care. And the thing is, it's an inappropriate role for her to be in because of the damage that she's been able to cause. And in her channel of stability, which is 9 to 52, she still has to see the bigger perspective, right? Like I said, she's going through this processing right now where she's able to see the bigger perspective of the harm she's caused. And similar to Trudeau, when she was going through her Saturn return, which is the return of Saturn to the position you were born, around 27 to 31 years of age, is where you learn a lot about your karma and you redefine and redevelop, right? Thing is, she didn't learn her lessons similarly to how Trudeau didn't learn his lessons during the blackface time, where he, when and if he was met with criticism. And so now it's a whole different world. It's a whole different energy. Like, white privilege doesn't get you very far, right? And so it's about looking back at the opportunities you've had and what you've been able to say without being really reprimanded as some of a marginalized group may have, for example. So what I find really interesting is her authority is a sounding board authority. I've actually never had a client that has a sounding board authority, and I think that that's pretty funny because for her, she likes to speak, right? A sounding board authority is an environmental authority. And so for her, like I was saying, she's able to easily talk shit because of the environment she's in. It's about feeding her, right? The energy of this classism and elite mentality. Her bitterness, like I said, is because she's out of alignment, but it continues because her sounding board is the Liberal Party. And the Liberal Party has a specific mindset, at least outwardly to the public, right? And so for her, the reason she's very vague is because when she speaks is when she processes. So if she starts to say something and hears herself say something really absurd, she's going to retreat and she needs that time alone. But she can't do that because she's not able to have that time and space, right? In her right angle across the four ways, like I was saying, her purpose is to shine her light when she's had time to process, and she hasn't had that. So she limits herself from saying too many things in depth, right? Like, when the Liberals give the runaround, or she gives a runaround, she goes in a circle. It's because she wants to say less words to either take less accountability, to either change her mindset, or to hear herself speak in a manner that's actually not who she is. And then what you're going to see is her get more and more bitter as the time or the submission goes on, right? And so she strives based on reaction and perception. So when everyone's clapping in the House of Commons after she says something really fucking absurd to a lot of us, that ends up igniting her energy, but it's a very distorted thing. And so she's like, oh yeah, everybody likes it, let me go again, right? And so this is very like fulfilling for her because she's in the perfect environment to be in this distortion. She's in the perfect environment to be enabled and fed this negative energy because of the mindset of that federal party and who she's literally sitting with at the same table time and time again. And so it's like, for her to make the right decisions or the big decisions, she needs to be around the right people. And because they all scratch each other's back and jerk each other off in the circle jerk, they're able to, pardon me, but they're able to easily just agree with one another in this echo chamber, which is really not productive for the rest of society, okay? Lastly, I want to go just quickly through her birth chart. She has a sun in Leo, and her sun in Leo is she would have just had her birthday. It was on August 2nd, but she has a strong sense of confidence as well as pride, ego, and greed. So that's a distorted side of the Leo energy, is all of that kind of negativity, hot-headed energy and things like that. And so for her, she has a moon in Scorpio. Moon is how we kind of run with our emotions, our internal world. And Scorpio energy overall is very introspective and intuitive, and it goes really, really deep, like in the depths of the ocean. And so for her, it's like even scratching a specific level of vulnerability or even considering opening up that emotional portal is super scary. And so she'd rather stay in ego. She'd rather stay up on surface level than actually go under that depth of water to see what she truly stands for. But the thing is a lot of people can't avoid that. It's only until you hit rock bottom and burn out, right? And so I do sense that maybe a little bit of that is coming. And it makes sense, actually. I wanted to see where her Pluto was. Her Pluto is in Virgo. We just hit Virgo season. Pluto is also a planet of transformation and introspection in our subconscious. And so right now, she will be going through an expansion in that thought process. So like I said, she's silent because she's processing. She's behind the four walls of her bedroom right now, rewatching and thinking and listening to herself and able to process in a whole different way. And like I said, it's not to really give compassion for the person. It's knowing that these people go through their own awakenings and healing journey and understanding of the good and the bad, the light and the dark in a very public eye and public space. And so that's why we've seen her acting a specific way. Now that everything's died down, there's crickets, because that kind of time is required for her to get back up again. And so she has trouble connecting with her emotions, and it's also something that, okay, what ends up helping her is also what holds her back, which is the desire for balance, the desire for fairness. And so when she thinks that she is going towards fairness, she's actually doing the direct opposite, right? When she thinks that she is speaking from a balanced space, she is actually not expanding her mindset. And so she has this push and pull dynamic in her energy, like, oh, well, I'm saying this because it's fair for society. But really, her lack of empathy and awareness and being able to really address what's going on in society from a different viewpoint is what hinders her palpability, right? Her ability to really relate to people around her. And so I think it's really fascinating to see that and to know that because of where she's been in terms of the federal scope, because of where she's been with the Liberal Party, she is much more easier able to stay in this negative mindset because she's being fed and enabled in this echo chamber. And the echo chamber is what really has her energy revolving again and again and again and again and again. But for her, that gets to the point of burnout. And so when she's going to be a hermit, I would think maybe even until January, we're not going to hear from her. And she's going to reemerge and be silent is what I kind of feel, because she's going to go through a whole new, she's just going to see, honestly. I think she's going to hear, because that's how she processes. She's going to hear what she said by watching, let's say, the videos in the House of Commons or on the Parliamentary Precinct channel here on YouTube. And she's going to be like, oh shit, now I'm hearing myself from a different perspective, right? And a part of the Chiron return that she's going to be going through is about learning that perspective and balancing out the karma. And unfortunately, it's caused a lot of unjust outcomes for people in Canada, right? So I hope that this resonated or made sense to you. Let me know what you think. Please leave a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. Please subscribe if this resonated. I'm still getting my new channel up and running, so I would love to do that. So leave a comment if you ever want to have a life purpose reading done of your own, where I read your energy for you. I know it can be scary, but I love doing it. I've done probably close to 100 of these. You can book via the link in my bio directly through my website, and we can get that going for you. All right, so I hope you take care. I hope you have a great one, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.